that we use our bodies so little, only walking so. This is a too much human movement. Instead, our movement as animals is more. Good morning, buongiorno, bonjour. I want to give you some information about the information that for animals other than human animals are very important to live. For me, it's very important as ethologist, as anti-speciesist ethologist, give a different narrative about the behavior, the decision-making, the choice that animality and animals do. So there is this right, the right to live informed about life, that it's very important from an animal perspective. Also, when we save animals, when we liberate animals, we have to have this right very, very central in the process. So now I start with some element that create problem with this right. The obstacle that create problem with this right, but also the importance for a pig, for a cow, for a horse, for a human, to have a life, an informed life. And then Sparta Association, our commitment, we have a sanctuary in Italy, Sparta, and we also support other sanctuaries in Italy and outside to make the animals living in these shelters, sanctuaries, and so on, also in families, to have an informed life. But we go to the obstacles. The obstacles in this question to live an informed life are, first of all, the speciesist knowledge that still is inside science about animals. Also, when we think that science is something that look for truth, we have to understand that science, more when we go to talk about animals, is full of ideologies. Science, we think something pure, clean, and free, but it's full of ideologies. Then also the training beliefs. We are convinced that for live with us, both in families or in sanctuaries, also for liberated animals, an animal have to be trained. It is an ideology. It's not the truth. Then also another obstacle is the fear that in our society is pushed towards the expression and the expressivity of animals. And another obstacle is that we grow losing our own animality as human animals. And when we losing our own animality, we lose also our animal way of thinking, animal logic. And we make sometimes the opposite that an animal logical, also a human animal logical, will do. And then the reactivity of our society. And we think that animals react on the world as a sort of object moving from the world to a stimulus-response world. But in the reality, animals won't act in the world, not react on the world, but act in the world. But we go to the first. For example, when we talk also often in animal activism, I hear also in sanctuaries, for example, that horse is the dominant, that dog is the boss, that pig is the leader. For the pig it's less. But all these labels, dominant, alpha, boss, don't come from science. There is no evidence that a social group of animals live under a hierarchical structure. It's just an ideology coming from a very far knowledge about animals, but knowledge about society. Come from the Europe of in the middle of the two world wars. Come from the era of nationalism. And so, from the era of militarism. And so, when we see a wolf, a whale, a pig, a rabbit, we fall very easy to judge through this ideology, also when we don't belong and we push away this ideology, because there is something that falls from high. We believe that a horse that comes to you won't dominate you. So this is important to understand, removing this ideology, because it's not scientific at all. Also, another part connected with this militaristic idea of animal societies is the animal training, that animals needs training, but training removed, in the reality, the information from animals. We think that give information, but we give only instructions, and sometimes, often, instructions are not information for an animal, are just instruction. So take care to avoid training. Also, when you train with positive reinforcement, it's terrible, more than bad training sometimes, because from a perspective, from the perspective of an animal, is better the bad training because it's more honest and transparent, instead to luring them with treats. So it's really, really important avoid, because then, you know, living an informed life doesn't need training. A dog starts to learn from himself, also facilitate from human animals, but also from other species living with. They create their own culture, also different species. We have also to take care to this aspect, because many sanctuaries, as you know, they have a lot of different species living together, and they create the same culture, an inclusive culture, with very different species. So training is a very strong obstacle, but also fear. I support, for example, dogs that have some critical problem in our society. And and I work also in other regions, for example, in Germany. And the same dog barking in Germany is different of the same dog barking in Italy. Because from my last experience with this dog that lives in Germany and in Italy, and I support him in Germany and in Italy, is not a critical dog. He lives in a critical context in Germany more. And the judge of people of this dog is different if they are German or Italian, generally. Then, of course, you can find also different things. But generally talking, when we walk with the dogs, Yoko, and Yoko starts to bark, because also barking is a right. In Italy, it's a right. An animal right. It's important barking for the dog. Then you have to see if that dog barks for reactivity or for express in a cognitive way. So there is a cognitive bark and an emotive bark, are two different kind of barking. But generally, in Germany, for example, they watch the dog barking, watch Yoko barking, and they immediately judge the dog and the humans with the dogs, because it's not a well-educated dog. In Italy, sometimes you can find walking with Yoko, Yoko starts to bark, and the people, oh, you are so young, I know you, you are a good guy. The expression is different, is read different. It's a cultural also understanding. So it's really important start to understand how to remove this fear and judge then of the expression of an animal. A pig that comes to you doesn't mean that come to you to hurt you. Maybe come to you also doesn't mean that come to you to have cuddles, but also that come to you to take information from you. So no food, no cuddles, not fear, but just information. And then also the lack of animal cognition from us as human animals. We losing our animality, we lose also the way to think and to reasoning. That is cognition. Cognition is not just intelligence. I don't like intelligence, talking about intelligence, because when we talk about animal intelligence, immediately we go in the pyramid where the dog is more intelligent than the whales almost as the human, and the human always on the peak. I don't like. I prefer talk in terms of animal cognition, because also our ends are cognitive. Our way of walking can be cognitive or reactive. A gallop of a horse can be cognitive or reactive. And so living a cognitive life means live a very informed and deep life. So when we save and liberate animals, we don't take care only to food and water and to clean the sanctuaries, because this is a trap. And we forgot the animals that we save, and we start to clean and clean and clean and give food, and water. But they want also adventures. They want to be participant in the life, not just a saved object, but a saved subject. The difference between subject and object is totally. A subject is into the life, is into the day of life. And also we react too much in our society, so we think that animals react around for them. So the reactivity problem is very important. We have an animality shared with other species full of logic. We are not reactive animals. A dog is not reactive. Is pushed to be a reactive animal. A cow is not a reactive animal. Is pushed to be a reactive animal. But what is an informed life then? An informed life is be informed in the interaction with others, not robotized by training, also positive training, because you become a robot, not more an animal. Be informed about your own body too. There are animals that have lost their own knowledge of their own body. More trained animals, more suffering animals in farm industry because the conditions of farm industry. But also in happy farm, they lose their body. Because the consideration of these animals, also in happy farm, is the same than farm industry. And also grow in a shared culture, making culture, animal culture. I will remember when I was a young student in Parma University in the 80s, in the first of 80s, I remember then during the ethology lessons, my teacher talking a lot about animal culture. The birds that they have their own culture, the same species of birds are different kind of culture depending from the territories they live. The sound, the voice that they do are different. The dialect are different in the same species. So they create culture. Also between different species living together. Many people say a dog have to meet other dogs because they are similar. Okay. But for that dog, it's interesting or irritating meet unknown dogs. Because if you go in Tanzania, I was there many years ago, and you observe a group of lycaons, the wild dogs, African wild dogs. You never can imagine that an unknown dog, lycaon, run to another group just because they are lycaons, because they kill him. It's logical. For a lycaon, is unlogical. Instead, in our society, we consider social a dog that run happy towards unknown dogs, and we judge problematic a dog that avoid the meeting of unknown dogs, that turn, make a curve, and avoid. It's not my matter. This is really a problem, because we put the label of social when we see an antisocial dog pushed of training and socialization classes, and we give the label problematic, and then we treat also medically with drugs that dog because poor, he have to be social with other dogs. So take care about a right knowledge about animals also living in urban situation, in town. So also an informed life means that an animal that arrives in a sanctuary or liberated from a farm industry have to recollect the map of also a geographical context. This is Onda. And also when we think to horses, we think the conventional image is that a horse have to live in a flat area, green, but that is an hell for a horse. It's a purgatory more, but it's really an hell, because a horse, for example, is a pre-desertic animal. He like live to rocks, moving towards different contexts. But also a pig. This is Pandora. living with us in Sparta. A pig, we consider a pig a very sleepy animals, living very little, but they are full of animality. And they live in a very rich context also between other species. And their body also change. And also the difference between a pig grow in a farm industry and a pig grow in a sanctuary, also about behaviors, is totally different. And the vets, the government vets, sometimes come with their knowledge of suffering, not a knowledge of ethology. So they know the pigs as reactive animals, and they fear the pigs. And when they meet these kind of pigs living in sanctuaries, they meet a very different animal, different expression, very cognitive. So also inside a social context, these are the titans living with us. It's really important. All the social affiliative contexts are important as an informed life, a real social informed life. And also Achille with the Naiades. Achille was labeled, also Achille, as a very aggressive rooster. But a rooster have to be a little bit aggressive, because otherwise he's not a rooster. And interesting things, I remember when I was a young student, the first lesson was about Zoology 1 in Naples University. Before then I moved to Parma. I'm from Naples. And my teacher, first lesson towards the students, he say, take care, maximum effort, maximum result with minimum effort. In nature, there is not a waste of energy. So Achille, when he arrived to me, he started to charge me, attack me a lot in different way, very aggressive, but have no consequence at all, no positive, no negative from me. I continue to make my work. And he charge. Then he start, okay, I cannot waste all this energy, because I need this energy for other activities. So he started to make false charge. He started to make, I hear from behind, and stop. 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 It's really, really important. So it's a logical. It's a really logical for an animal. Don't waste energy. Because it's important to have energy, maybe to defend the chicken from a fox, or to interact with a fox, maybe. And this is, but I think that here there is no video, maybe? No. This is, for example, Eos, and he moved jumping on a tree. We think that only the horse can jump, only the dogs can jump elements, but also a pig can jump animals if that pig have a cognitive body, cognitive muscles, cognitive movement. It's so logical also for a horse. This is Sparta horse. So also give different images of humans. We are so boring. I remember that as an association some years ago, we used this motto, slogan, stop to boring animals. because we bore a lot of animals. So give also a different kind of image of another animals, a human animals. Why not? Here we are in the Netherlands. So take information from a different movement of a different human animals. Okay, this is Sparta 2, also different position, different movement. Also because we have our own animality, that we use our bodies so little, only walking so. This is a too much human movement. Instead, our movement as animals is more interesting for a dog walking with you. Many people say, me too, I walk in the wood with the dog. Okay. But for a dog, moving into a bush, into the forest, with this human moving through, it's very interesting and fascinating. But also in very practical things. Here is the pedicure moment for the pigs, but it's a social pedicure moment in which someone study and take information from the activity on the others. Just 2 minutes. For example, this is Rhea. I cut a little piece of hoof and then make her, I don't give food, but I give the piece of hoof so he can experience her own hoof. But also make a theatrical experience for, this is Yoko, for a young dog to make trimming, but with a wood stick. Or for a very old horse that is 27, so maybe that in future needs some moment of more care, healthy care, to explore a more close. A horse lived all her life in nature, also explore a box, not as a closure, but as a possibility to be more rich in the knowledge of the life. So here we explore together this new situation for a very old horse. But also, when we move from a side to another in our life, is happen. Our animals explore really the tracks before, so they smount the tracks, deconstruct the tracks. But also, for a cow, deal with a sanitary visit. Instead to be obligated to a visit, to participate in this visit, making experiences. What do we do? So, anti-speciesist ethology studies, an animality study program. We make education a program of education and study about animals and animality. Then we participate also as activists in seminar, protest. I personally support some legal situation as an ethologist, but also very practically facilitate other animals, facilitate other sanctuaries, and so on. Writing books, also about wild boars in Italy, the metropolitan wild boars, the era of the metropolitan wild boar. That is very interesting as a era. but also making things, for example, with the young students in the center of Genoa, making some animality experience and observing the wild boars in the middle of the town. I transform them in young ethologists to understand really the animals that live in your own town. And then also, of course, moment of understanding of an informed life, also for human animals. And this is other activities, and I think that I finished it. If you have questions, of course, are welcome.
Thank you, Francesco, for your speech. Very interesting. Do we have any questions for? I'll start here. Who was first?
Please, in Italian.
Thank you for the talk. It was really interesting, and I liked a lot of what you said. I liked all of what you said, actually. But I've got a question about dogs specifically, because unlike a lot of the other animals, the dogs are actually quite a part of human civilization, as in, like you say, you take them on the streets and they live really within our society. My mum actually rescues dogs from other countries and gets them out of places where they'll be killed. And when they are violent, or like as you would call natural, is natural for them to be violent, they can't rehome them. And actually, a lot of them will either be killed or they'll spend their entire lives in a cage because they can't be around children or other animals. So as much as I agree with you about keeping them as natural as possible, how do we balance that with actually trying to give them some kind of, you know, good life?
Totally, sorry, I prefer to talk. Can you take the microphone, please, for your audience? Yes, I will do. Yes, I understand really. Your question is also my important point in this situation. For me, natural doesn't mean crazy. Doesn't mean, but more be. I don't talk so much about nature, because then nature. We make too much distinction between nature and non-nature, nature and urban situation. But urban is nature too. We build, it's nature. So this is important, but so doesn't mean crazy, but also doesn't mean to go into training process. You can also learn from a cognitive understanding of the world around you, and maybe it's more easier. I am a facilitator. I don't abandon the dog because he have to live natural. I stay really, in the case of the dogs, but also the animals. So I totally agree with your question, and for me the alternative is make a process in which the dogs is not trained, but is informed about the life, also in urban situation, also in families, also in the adoption. I work almost all with shelters. So for dogs that then go adopted, to move in another instead to stay in a cage. Also old dogs. For example, generally when we want to adopt a dog, for example, that has lived all his life with another dog in a shelter, we arrive a family, we want to adopt a dog, there is this one, okay, but her or him live with another dog that maybe have social bonds. So my suggestion is to adopt two dogs. That is easier from the dog perspective. So also these are important elements about this. Thank you.
More questions?
Ah, okay. Thank you.
I'm wondering about how, so the example of how animal lives are so normally valued, for example, from effective altruism or welfare, that you've reduced the suffering of, you measure the amount of pain the object experiences, you can reduce suffering by 40%. And then when people apply that same logic to animals who are living a much richer experience of life, for example, in the wild, like rewilding, and people are trying to put that same experience saying, oh, pain is just a negative, and therefore if they live a life of pain, it is therefore bad, rather than saying this is an experience which you can grow from, and sometimes it'll kill you too. So how would you apply it to evaluating ethics such as factory farming, or comparing that when that's copied and pasted over to live animals who are living a much rich and varied life? And
so you mean the process?
How would you? Lots of people, for example, want to just avoid animal suffering, yes. And that's applied in the logic in factory farms. Then people apply that to animals living a much richer experience in your language.
Okay.
Rewilding, but how do you apply that in animal ethics? Yeah.
Yeah. Starting from the little. When we want to liberate animal suffering, we go too much fast. We go too much fast and we move too much fast, and maybe that animal won't go slow in the process. And maybe also to deal with new information, also in rewilding animals, it's really, really important to go in a slow process, making the process piece by piece. So, okay, liberate from animal suffering is a first step, but you have to be very cautious, also answering again, very slow in the process. Maybe, for example, a cow coming from farm industry, all the life close, all the life suffering, all the life used, don't need immediately to go in a green area, but make little step. Also knowing other cows, where she go to live, for example. So for me, it's really important in the process of facilitation, just because they come from very painful context, to go slow in the process, to go careful in the process, and to give the animal the possibility to become, to have a self-liberation. The concept of self-liberation is also important from the animal perspective. An animal that liberates himself. But to liberate himself, he has to go slow. I don't know if I give you an answer. More or less.
I was asking if, for example, if we free up land and create much more nature and introduce, billions, trillions more animals. That's some people, that's a live debate in the animal.
Okay, you talk about. Yes, the problem is that sometimes with these animals.
Sorry to interrupt you, we don't have much time. Maybe we can... We have one last question. Excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
Ciao, Francesco.
Ciao.
I can say in Italian, but I'm going to speak in English.
No, English.
I have a practical question for you. So we work in an animal sanctuary. We have two situations that we might need your help to address. One are two donkeys. They're very wild, so they're very happy to be wild, and we are happy for them. But sometimes we need to do medical care. They don't like it. Like, it's impossible to get close to them. Even if they see a brush, it's like they run away. So I'm wondering what we should do to make them comfortable, to, trim the hooves and, brush them and stuff like this.
Okay. But I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why you are happy?
Well, because they're free. They do what they want.
The concept of happiness, then this is another talk. Animal happiness is another concept, but it's just a joke.
Yeah.
But of course, wild doesn't mean absence of learning. Wild mean also understand the learning, putting some brushes around, for example. You put there on the ground and then move away. Then maybe you come back after some days and you start to brush, because our human unlogical, human too much human, is that when you start to brush a donkey, a horse, a dog, you have to brush completely. Or you have to trim the hoofs, all four, completely. This is more an obsession than a need. So you can start maybe exploring a brush, the donkey come, and to start to brush yourself. And also here the sounds is also already important. Or touch the hoofs, and then move away, and then come back, because you are volunteers, you stay there almost every day. Yeah. So you have the time. Yeah. Don't need that you stay 1 hour to make these things. 5 minutes. You are with the car wheel, putting the cleaning, and so stop. And continuing to clean. Okay. This help the animal to include new knowledge, new information, and grow in an easy way, but day by day, in a lifestyle. Prego.
Thank you, Francesco. Please give a round of applause for Francesco. Thank you
Grazie.
so much.
Viva l'animalità anche umana.